Hello and welcome to my video on diminished scales in jazz piano. We're going to be looking at some examples from well-known pianists, some less well-known, but so the pianists are Paul Smith, who often accompanied Ella Fitzgerald. We're going to look at Bill Evans, we're going to look at Bud Powell and Erroll Garner. And this is in part one. In part two, we'll have some other pianists coming up as well, like Anomaly. You may not have heard of him, but he's more of a modern pianist, and people like that, and Oscar Peterson. I can't list them all off the top of my head right now, but yeah, this is part one. So, but before we do that, I just wanted to give a little basic introduction to the diminished scale in case you didn't know what it was. If you do know what it was, then I recommend you just skip ahead to the first example. I've given time codes so you can do that. So what is the diminished scale? So the best way to look at it is to see what it's composed of in terms of intervals. And as you can see in front of you, it's basically a half and then a whole, half and then whole, half and then whole, and half and then a whole. And that's it, all there is to it. Half whole, half whole, half whole. And you'll find that within this scale, you get 8 notes rather than 7, so that makes it quite fun to play with. You can do quite a lot with it. You'll find that it contains chords. A very obvious one, the diminished scale, you can find diminished chords in it. In fact, you've got 2 fully diminished chords. You've got that one and this one. This one's diminished scale in C, by the way, this example. And you've got that. It's basically those two combined. So obviously, if you're playing those chords, then you can use this scale to improvise around those chords. But in the examples I give, you'll find that it's more often used on dominant chords, like a C7. Why does it work so well with dominant chords? Well, if you look at it, and I've written it in this way, the accidentals with these unharmonics, so that you can see, because basically, look at the first one, well that's just, that's the tonic, that's the root, that's fine. This is what you'd call a flattened ninth. It's got the sharpened ninth, it's got the third, it's got the sharpened 11th, it's got the 5th, it's got the 13th, the 7th, the minor 7th, and back to the root. It's got all those things, so that's one of the reasons it works so well with the dominant chord. And if you just play around this chord, you'll find this scale, you'll find lots of interesting things that you can do with it. It's something to just mess around with. Now, one other thing that's important to remember about this: if you work on the scale on C diminished scale, which goes well with the C dominant chord, and then if you work out the E flat diminished scale, you'll find that that has the same notes, just starting in a different place, just starting from E flat. If you look at the F sharp or G flat diminished scale, you'll find that has the same notes, different place. And if you look at the A diminished scale, you'll find that has the same notes, a different place. So it's kind of like when you learn the C major scale, you learn all the modes as well, like Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian. This is the same thing. So by learning, so you may think, oh, you've got to learn it in 12 keys. Really, you've only got to learn it in 3 keys, because once you learn it in C, you learn it in all of those other keys as well. Now, I don't want to over-explain into why that is. It's something that you just got to work around, play with, and then it will become apparent to you why one scale fits several keys. You'll just, I think it's better to something you want to discover yourself. And that's everything that I'm going to give on the basics of the diminished scale. Right. So in this example, we're going to be looking at Paul Smith, who's accompanying Ella Fitzgerald in the song Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered. It's a beautiful song. I recommend listening to the whole thing. I mean, I'm going to recommend listening to all of these songs really, but let's hear the example.
After one whole quart of brandy, like a daisy I'm awake with no...
Okay, and that's it. So hopefully you caught all that. And if you want to see me go into a little bit of deeper analysis into this, stay tuned. Otherwise, skip ahead to the next example. So what have we got going on here? We're in a key of F major. Notice how this uses a very common chord progression, which is basically 1, 6, 2, 5. But the order is changed around slightly so that we begin on 2. And that's it. It's not that uncommon really to begin on 2 either. So let me play through it slowly so you can see it a little bit better. Like that. So I think what's useful to notice about this is that the D minor 7, the second time around hearing it, is replaced with the D dominant 7th, and to add that extra element of spice and surprise, it's a D7 with all the good stuff of a D diminished scale, and the chord that fits around it. All of these notes are within diminished scale as well. And he plays it. The way he plays it is really good. It's really expressive, kind of with a bit of attack on that top note. Okay. In this example, we're going to be looking at Bill Evans playing Easy Living on his album New Jazz Conceptions. So you're probably looking at this thinking, well, that's a bit of a mess, and that's probably because it was transcribed by me. But where is the diminished scale? The diminished scale is here above the C7. You'll be able to pick it out very easily because it just comes after this big run, this whole tone run. Let's have a listen. Here we go. That's it. There it is. So we've got the G7 doing this big whole tone run, which then turns into a G diminished scale at the very top, because it's I feel it adds that extra tension and it helps prepare us for going into the C diminished scale here. And so we've got thirds, minor thirds. The really neat thing about the diminished scale is you can stick to minor thirds and keep it all uniform. What I mean by that is that, for instance, if you try to stick to thirds on the C major scale, you get a major third, minor third, major third, and as you travel up it. But as you travel up or down the diminished scale, you can stick to minor thirds. It's just got one of those properties about it. And it just sounds oh so good. And against the C dominant 7th in the left hand. Notice how the C7 is going into the F minor 7, so it's a kind of tonic, dominant tonic thing going on there. In this example, we've got Erroll Garner playing Autumn Leaves, the album's Live at Sunset School. So, if you want to check out the whole thing, I mean, yeah, it's another great piece of music. I recommend listening to all of it. Before I tell you where the diminished scale is, the use of it is, have a listen to it and see if you can pick it out, see if you can use what you heard from previous to help identify it. Alright, here we go. Here. So yeah, very short moment that we heard it there. So any ideas, hopefully you might have got something like this on over the E flat dominant seventh. It's not really an E flat dominant seventh chord, it's way more than just that, but functionally it works as an E flat dominant seventh chord because it's leading us as a dominant chord into A flat minor, and then that A flat minor is basically chord 4 of the whole scheme of things because it's in the key of E flat minor. Right. So I really like this example because let's hear it. It has so much tension built into it. If we compare it to the previous example with Bill Evans doing it, the tension was here, and then the tension comes down. But here, he's using the diminished scale to rack it up, and then by the time we... come on. Get to that A flat minor chord, it's just a big release. I think it's also worth noting how it can be used to contrast with different harmonic worlds. What do I mean by that? So if we look at how Bill Evans used it, he had the whole tone, going from the world of the whole tone to the diminished world with the minor thirds. It's a real treat for the ears, I find. You know, two different worlds there. And then this is a kind of similar thing. We've got this quartal world, quartal harmony, you know, using the 6th and 9th of the E, which then we get these minor thirds and diminished. It's a real treat for the ears. So in this example, we're looking at Bud Powell playing Collard Greens and Black Eyed Peas from the album The Amazing Bud Powell. Let's have a listen. There it is, just that bit there. So let's take a look at what's going on. You can probably guess as to where the diminished scale is here. It's over in the right hand, over in on the E dominant 7th. So one of the things you'll find that is interesting about the diminished scale, so you can have, so say I'm in the C diminished scale, you can create major triads like that, and you can go up a minor third, you can go up a minor third, and minor third again, and, until you get back up to C. And the other great thing about this is you can also put that with it as well, put in a flatter 9th, and then you can rearrange it to get this kind of chord. And apparently this kind of chord has a name, according to Wikipedia, which is a beta chord. And yeah, you can play loads of beta chords in the diminished scale. So you can play that beta chord, and then you can play that up a minor third, and then up a minor third, until you arrive back to where you are. In this, he's in the E diminished scale. Makes sense being over the E dominant. And then he's got all these beta chords. It's basically those bits. Just that last chord before going to the A minor 7, that's not diminished scale, but all of this is. It works great, and if you go back to my basics, you know, you'll see that any note you play in the diminished scale works well in the dominant chord of that same name. So any note within the E diminished scale works well over the E dominant chord, and you've got this really good chromatic bit in the left hand, just sort of rolling between the minor thirds, and that's it. Also notice the chord progression, it's a 1, 6, 2, 5, so we're going back to the first example with Paul Smith. It's even in the same place, it's on the 6, which acts as a dominant to taking us into the 2. on the A minor. You know, so I got going into that A minor. Works nicely. I hope this is clear and you enjoyed this video. If so, give a thumbs up and subscribe. If there's something that's unclear, mention it in the comments. I like to get your feedback. Thanks a lot.